Hello, welcome to another episode of the E.M.L pod. I am your host, Vodigan, and I'm also the proprietor of the E.M.L network. Today in the house to speak with us is a seasoned filmmaker, a movie creator, a movie producer, a movie director, and an all-round Nigerian music business entrepreneur. Lotana, welcome to the house.
I don't know what he's talking about.
Of course you do. Of course you do. Because it feels like you're somebody who lives, eats, and breathes the art of movie production. And when I hear you talk about it, it seems as if it's all you've been doing your life. But that's not the case.
No.
I have on good authority that you were in the banking system before all this started. What made you take that leap from that area of life, from the banking system into filmmaking?
I was in urban planning even before I got into banking.
Okay.
And the truth was, as a young person, I was basically looking for my place of expression. I grew up as a kid who used to love to draw. You know, my dad used to say they leave him, all he wants to do is eat, draw, sleep, repeat, and I realized that it wasn't just necessarily about drawing. It was just more a need to create. I always wanted to, put a picture to the images I had in my mind. And so for me, it was a journey to finding myself. I read urban and regional planning in school because I initially wanted to be an architect, but I didn't pass physics in WAEC. So I ended up, doing something on the alternative. Spent 5 years doing that. And I was great at the drawing elements of, urban and regional planning. But when I, left work and then had to work in some local government, office, I thought, nah, this is not where I want to be. So I moved and said, okay, why don't you go and make money? I went to work in the bank. I thought I was going to be there for 1 year, but then I ended up spending 7 years. And before I, said amen, and there was a wife there, kids to take care of. So you had to do what you had to do at the time. Today, a lot of people talk about the film industry, but at the time there wasn't exactly a film industry. Oh, well, let me not disrespect those that were, older than us in the space. It hadn't become the very much that it's gradually becoming now. And so for a lot of people, it wasn't a clear source, a place where you could make, money. Of course, people were making money from it, but it felt more like an open market environment. Now, at some point, somewhere with the advent of cinemas, people started trying to create higher value type films.
Yeah.
It was around that time that I, said, I'm not sure this is where I want to be. I speak a bit of Christianese, if you allow me.
Yeah.
But I was basically saying, what am I supposed to be doing? What am I really supposed to be doing? And so I felt a need, to find that place where I express myself. I had a conversation with a good friend of mine, Tolu Awobiyi. We went to school together, and he said, you clearly are not, happy with doing what you're doing. So why don't you find your own? And I felt a draw towards film. Interestingly, at the time, I would find that I would wake up and the first thing I want to do is watch a movie. I would jump into the loo and I would, take my phone or my laptop along and I'm watching a movie. I'm eating, I'm watching a movie. Every time I catch a, snap, I'm watching something.
Yeah.
I kind of almost always wanted to stimulate my mind. If I'm not doing that, I'm reading a novel, I'm reading some sci-fi thing, and all of that. So I could tell that my superpower would be in the creative space. And when I found with film, I could do everything. I could express all of my talents within that space. And so somewhere in 2012, 2013, I, made the jump from Standard Chartered where I worked. Had a short stint in advertising with Inside Communications before I then worked very briefly with Tolu Awobiyi. Then I set up my own company, Lotana and Company.
Okay. You spoke about the money-making part of the film industry, but we'll get to that a bit later. It did seem like you spent a lot of time under, what would I say, internship, if I call it, for this. And then you went straight into setting up Lotana Studios. Now, I see it as a very big leap because you did mention that there was a family to take care of and get out. How was it the early days of film production on your own, with your own company? What were the growing pains that you experienced?
I think the interesting thing is, I quickly found out that what I wanted to do was not a business commodity. Film is not like selling a keg of oil or, which had like a unit product. A unit product for film is a humongous enterprise. Literally, every film is a project. Even though, in fairness to my colleagues in Nollywood, they found a way to make it something you can shoot out every 2 weeks, right? But to make a good film, you dedicate a lot of time and effort and focus to doing it. Interestingly, to become a good filmmaker, you also need to have made quite a number of films.
Yeah.
So, what was clear immediately I started was that this was going to involve a lot of work. And at the beginning, it was rough. It was pretty rough because again, I had to keep up, taking care of my family. So I couldn't exactly start out like a young filmmaker. I was also not young in the terms of being young and just trying to figure out what I wanted to do. I needed to build a business out of it. So I spent quite an amount of time looking for support things or support opportunities. Now, what do I mean by support opportunities? Corporate work. I remember that initially my first short film I made for the Lagos State Ministry of Science and Technology. And, it was basically coming up with an idea that, how do we use film to communicate with these young kids? This is the one thing that they love. They like to be taught visually. They're always on YouTube, they're always on this thing. And so we came up with a docudrama that we then shared with the school that we then brought, several schools into, at the E.M.L auditorium in Alausa then to showcase, to these young kids. And it was a huge success. Made some money that then, gave me the opportunity to then try out a few things. I took the film also to several schools, basically showcasing them. Of course, that was also a lot of work, and in between there, I also had to, find other small things in design, trying to do designs for people to survive, But at some point, I realized that, it wasn't something I was going to be able to put one leg on the shore and put one leg in the water.
Yes.
I had to either jump in,
or
step out completely. And I think it was in 2014, I began to say to myself, Tolu, you want to make your first film. And that's how we started, developing the plans for a couple of days that we shot in Ibadan, our first production. In retrospect, that was
the icebreaker.
Yes, that was the one that opened the doors for us and then got us into this space that we are currently in.
Yours sounds like a very unique situation because you didn't entirely exactly had the luxury of time between experimenting and making it a business. I mean, it all looks fine now. But where would you say was the first breakthrough where you felt like, okay, now I know I was born to do this?
I think the most important thing I learned was that filmmaking could not be made alone. I have something that's written on the wall in my dining room. It says, filmmaking is a miracle of collaboration. So everybody sees the director, everybody sees the producer,
yes,
but it takes an army of people to make one film. Recently, we made a movie called The Artifact, where we traveled across 7 different states in Nigeria, and we were traveling with over 80 people.
Yeah.
Simply because, and someone once asked me, so why did you need 80 people? I said, if you're going to take 12 vehicles on the road, you will need mechanics, you will need security guards. Mm-hmm. And these are not essential to the film itself.
Miscellaneous.
Right? You're going to have to accommodate people. You're going to have to feed people. You're going to have nurses on set. You can have a dream, but to make your dream
reality,
that takes not just you. And you have a lot of key people who come into making that dream reality. The guy who's behind your camera can make or break you. The guy who's creating the art world that you're seated in can make or break you. And that continues to expand. As little as, I was telling one guy when we were shooting in Jesha, he was running down the hill and I was screaming at him like, what are you doing, dude? If you tumble and you break your head, my film is done.
Wow. That's not a good place to do that.
Yes, so.
Yeah. So you mentioned your latest movie, The Artifact. I would like to talk about it. Now, you do sound like somebody who is naturally inspired to do what you do. Okay, so I wouldn't ask you what inspired you to make the movie, but I would like to see what was the idea, behind you making the artifact?
Okay, so one of the things that I say or that I believe is that, part of growing as a culture is coming to understand where you're coming from. Right? Let me simplify the story. I traveled to London in, I think, 2019, and I came out of a hotel. I had some hours to kill, and I was going to do the London tour in this, this is their big boss, and I was just about to get into it, and I walked past a particular stall, and I saw people lining up, and I asked them, "Sorry, what are you guys doing here?" And they said they're going into the museum, the London Museum, and I asked them how much is it going to cost, and the person said $10 or £10. So let me just, do a quick, and I went into that place, and I was there for another 6 to 8 hours, right? And what was I doing there? It was literally like, you remember that my book of Bible stories?
Yes.
It was literally like that book came alive.
Mm-hmm.
I saw Nebuchadnezzar's statue. Like I'm seeing the Pharaoh, I'm seeing it live. It's no longer about, books. Somewhere there, I even went into the African, section.
Yes.
And I saw, literally all the brass, terracotta things that were built, and they were arranged in order, literally from the 15th century down to the 19th century. When you're looking at it, and you can literally see at the point at which, the Portuguese came, and the Benin people changed from wearing whatever they used to wear to wearing skirts. Now that thing they wear right now is it's a mimic of the Portuguese skirts that the people used to wear, and you could see the power of how culture was transformed over a period of time. And I thought to myself that this is how stories are captured, and it gave me a different perspective, which then made me say, is Africa capturing its own stories? How are we even able to understand where we're coming from? And so for me, especially when I think about the next generation who's pretty disconnected from
this reality.
Yes. It's important that the white man knows his history. And that's why, they call themselves a civilization. For us to be a civilization, we need to understand where we came from. We need to have our own history that we've told ourselves. Yeah. And so the artifact for me was an ode to telling our own stories. Secondly, I also think that for me, it was very important to say, how do you capture the value of the father in the son? What are the most important things that a father transfers to a son? What is an inheritance? What does that mean? And can we tell a story that helps people understand, this new generation to understand the things that brought them to where they are? Yeah. And so for me, again, I usually tell very light-hearted stories. Yeah. It's not heavy on these things, but all these elements you see as the story is told.
You're talking about Africans not wanting to tell their own stories. I think you can attribute some of it to religious fanacity in some level. So I was watching an interview where someone was talking to Michael B. Jordan and noted that the meaning of the B in his name, the full the acronym was Bakari. And he explained, and he said it was given based on a Babalawo and all. And then somebody went to Twitter and say, we should not watch his movies again. He's from an occultic background. And then someone now responded and said, why do we always do this? Why can't we separate African heritage from our religion or our spirituality or Christianity, specifically speaking? A lot of people are anime freaks. They watch Japanese anime manga, and it's a reflection of the Japanese culture, the samurai
elements.
Yes, and all this. And we enjoy it. And this is just reflecting the ancient Japanese culture. They fight with swords. It was in the olden days they used swords. Now, why can't we do the same with our culture? We talk about Ogun, Obatala, and all the gods, Shango and the likes of them. I think when we start understanding that our African heritage takes a huge place in how we were formed or how we grew into what we were. And like I always say, I think that's one of the messages Fela Anikulapo Kuti was trying to pass to us, that do not let the white man, or do not let the white man mentality that we are having in ourselves cut down or bring down our African heritage. And I think that's a very good, how I put it, standpoint that the Artifact movie, proceeds for.
So I say that people, it's a combination of things. One, education. Two, the function of fear, right? True faith drives our fear, right? Now, the challenge we have is that many of us are still transitioning from our fear functions to our faith function. And so we're still in that place where we're like, don't, because the white guys go and dig up, all sorts of things. They don't fear that those things will jump on them.
Yeah.
Right? Even though this is not to disacknowledge the fact that those things exist as it were. I always tell my kids, I said, the thing that is in the dark, if it could kill you, it would have killed you already.
You'd be dead.
So the truth is, it can't kill you until you give it the power to.
do so.
And the way to give it power to is to give your mind to it. They exist. This is not to say they don't. It's not to submit yourself to its influence. So the black man will say juju works. The white man will come and kick the juju and walk on and not have any. Why? Because he's not subject to it in his mind. I think that for me is the place where this sits.
So it's basically like mental power. Okay.
Well, that's spiritual power, but that's not the topic of this conversation.
Okay. All right.
But yeah.
You've talked, now let's go back to that money making thing you mentioned in the movie industry. And you also expressed how important collaborations are. Movie producers coming together with script writers, with, narrators, authors of books for adaptations, things like that. And I think the reason why it's important is because of the issue of getting the film maximized in returns. Getting returns, getting profit from these movies going out there. So to get a movie that will give you good profits, you have to put a lot of capital into it.
Yes.
And I think it was working with you that made me learn that you can be the greatest filmmaker of all time. You can be the person who does the best movies. And then you drop a particular blockbuster, which makes let's say about 500 million in the first 3 weeks. And the crazy thing is that no matter how good you are, no matter your influence, you are not getting up to probably 40% of that money. And that's me being kind of ish. Of that money.
You definitely don't get up to 40%.
Up to 40% of that money. It's crazy. So why is that the situation in the market?
Again, like I said, the way the system works is it's a collaboration. So when you make your film, you just made a product, and there are hundreds, if not thousands of that same type of product. The question is not so much about the product, it's about how you market the product.
Yes.
I find that there are a lot of good films. Until you stumble on it, you don't realize this is a great film. Many films are made in 2013, 2014. Eventually now sneak up onto Netflix and everybody's shouting about it. And it's because it didn't have the money to drive marketing. Now, the marketers then place a premium on the ability to help you sell your film. So, for example, in Nigeria, you take your film to a cinema, you end up somewhere around 30%, or as a producer, that's what you get. Because, interestingly, and this is a conversation that we've been trying to have with the government takes 20% in the way of taxes, entertainment, VAT, whatever it is. 20% of what you earn goes to the government. 50% goes to the platforms that help you, say the cinema houses themselves. You, the producer, then end up with 30%. It doesn't seem like a fair deal, but they say this is what is the operations anywhere in the world. However, it only makes sense when you really start to capture real value. And what do I mean by real value? So when you say you made 500 million, what does 500 million convert to in real terms, global terms? 500, let's do 1-to-1, $1 to 1,000 naira, which we know is not what it is.
Yeah.
That will put us around $500,000. Do you know that some kid in the BFI in the UK gets a grant for 1.2 million pounds to go shoot his first film, right? So the economics of where we live, also has, ways that it limits what you can do. I was in a room recently and I had some key acquisitor of African content who said, you better don't make any African film more than $1 million, right? Because nobody's going to be willing to buy it beyond that, scale. Again, it's a question of the fact that we are in a field called entertainment. And in entertainment, people have to eat first before they entertain themselves.
Yeah.
So it's always a reflection of what the economy is. If the economy is booming, then there is a boom. So in the economy between 2014, 2018, there was an oil boom, which meant there was more disposable income, which allowed people to go to cinemas, which then allowed the industry to grow. And then, of course, the growth then attracted the Netflixes and the Amazons to come in to, oh, there's something happening in this space. What can we do to, and hopefully that boom continues.
Amen to that. Amen to that. So now to have that boom continuing, we do understand that collaborations do play a big part. What would you say is the biggest challenge with collaborations in film production in Nigeria and the African music industry? Sorry, African movie industry right now. What's the biggest challenge?
I would say structure. There's talent and there's opportunity, and then there's all the good things that can happen in a place where there's there are no limitations, right? A lot of what we do in film here is possible because there's no unions, or there are no regulations, so there's a lot of guerrilla filmmaking that's happening.
Yeah.
However, abroad, if you're going to shoot on the streets, you have to shut down the street, you have to pay certain permits, you have to take permission from this. All of those don't necessarily exist here, which gives us the opportunity to do a lot of things. But the problem is you can't grow without structure. So I think the industry is getting to the point where it's beginning to max on the opportunity it has, and it needs to structure better. Now, what does structure mean? Structure then means that we need to bring in lawyers.
Yes.
We're beginning to bring in insurance. We need to bring in security. And as you bring in other elements of industry into your film, into the film space, the costs go up, right? I'll give you a simple example. I remember once I reached out to a music producer, a musician or an artist. I said, I just need the beat where your song says this particular phrase to drive home a point. And the manager says to me, if I'm not paying 15 million, I can't get the content. So I said, can I get permission to get somebody else to sing it? If you do it, I'll sue you. I'm like, it means I can't use it. So I let go. Now, the interesting thing is a collaboration between the film industry and the music industry in Africa would help us go really much farther. But the question is, how do we structure these things? Burna Boy is in O2, Wizkid is in those places. And it's happening already. It's just happening in a very skewed form because you see the quality of their music videos. It's Nigerians that are shooting those videos, right? Can we transition that into film? Can we leverage what we're getting there? But who is helping us build these opportunities? Are the managers there able to see the opportunities to swing both ways? So right now I have a couple of my films that have some of these old, tunes in, but I had to leverage friendship and literally beg to say, bros, please just help me, let me use. So this particular film a long time ago, we used a lot of, LD, and thank you very much, LD. A lot of his contents to drive people's minds back to the time, the setting of the song, of the story, and there's something about hearing music from that time that tells you that, oh, you are really in that time.
Yes.
And so until those kind of collaborations happen, the industry doesn't grow. Now, a lawyer wants to jump on my business and tells me he wants to earn 5% of my interest, of what I earn. Then I tell him, okay, even the investors want to take 80%. I'm left with 20. I still have to pay actors back end.
How am I going to
5 to 10%? How can I give you 5% of, of 2 years work? So even at this level, we're still struggling to be able to pay our lawyers properly, pay our insurance properly. Because when I had to take 80 people across Nigeria, of course, you have to do life insurance.
Yes,
at the minimum, there's equipment insurance that needs to be done, and all of those things. And so collaboration is the way forward. But collaboration can only be done in an environment of proper structure.
Yes, I'm going to address something you said, and you may have gotten a way to have that song without having to, asking for permission.
And all those.
Now, what's it called? This on the house. It's free.
We'll take it.
All of you listening to it, it's free.
We will take it.
There are two different levels of using something that is already existing. It's called sampling. There's sampling and there's interpolation. Sampling is when you take the direct song recorded by the person and put it into that body of work you're doing, be it a new music or motion picture or syncing it with audiovisual products. And there's also interpolation. He sang a particular song and you are doing a fresh repeat of what he had done in a new sound recording, in a new composition for it. Do you understand? So that one is different. And that's one thing for a whole song or a part of it. Now, when you are now having somebody go to a studio and say a couple of phrases that someone has said before, it's different. It's as if it is part of your trademark that people listen to. Yeah, you can now legally trademark it. For example, when Mr. Macaroni says, Hoin, you are doing well. You can go and trademark it because everybody knows that when you hear Hoin, you are doing well, your mind goes to Mr. Macaroni. You can trademark it. But just a couple of lyrics in a particular song, when somebody just drops it, it's not something you can go and they'll change you back that this is too generic. You can't hold up that part.
So I can say now.
If you are saying it was just a small phrase in a particular song and you wanted someone to record it there, they don't allow you under fair usage, knowing that you're not using it to make money.
Say 10 seconds.
There's an exception called fair usage that you can use a particular phrase when you are not trying to make particular money off that song just to pass a particular message in your production.
So let me.
There's always a way around.
So I'm going to give you an example, and maybe whether this is online or offline, I don't know. But so what we wanted to use was, when I wanted to drive home the point of everybody's a thief.
Yes.
So I had to use Olil everybody.
Yes.
Right, and that was all I needed. I just needed that. You know, the familiar tune with Olil everybody.
Wow, you should have called me because it's not like an idiom or a normal parable. Olil everybody, something barabu.
Yes.
I don't know what the full thing is, but it's an ancient, age-long saying. It's not even.
It doesn't own it.
Like it's supposed to call all the babalawos or the groits of the olden days
to say, well, we take permission
and pay them money too. So I mean. Sometimes I think we learn every day.
You see why it's important to have collaboration.
Yes.
If I called my lawyer, maybe it would have been easy for me to just,
Well, like I said, this one is on the house. next one will cost you. This is a sad note for me because I was a huge user. Netflix has left Nigeria, or they are leaving Nigeria. Who do you blame?
So I want to put it to you like this: they're not leaving. They've actually put out news that it's not exactly leaving Nigeria.
So what is it like?
It's a restructuring of the relationship.
Is that not just use of English?
No. Funny enough, it's not. In fairness, they're still buying. It's just that they changed the way that conversation happens, right? So the first thing they've done was, for example, they kind of like geo-locked the experience. Now you can't blame them. So we are in Africa paying, say, I was hit with 7,000 naira, a debit of 7,000 naira. Now, when you convert 7,000 naira to dollars, what does that come to? It's not up to $1, right?
No,
$1 is 1.5. It's about $4.
Yes.
Now, your contemporaries in other countries are paying 10 to 12, 15.
Yes.
Right? You are paying 4, right? So the first thing is they can't serve you the same content. 2, they find that your content is also not traveling as well. Not because we don't know how to tell stories. We don't have the funds to make content that, people will, jump on globally. Now, it's easy to say, Shebi is just a story. But there's a certain quality level. And when you hear people say, I don't watch Nollywood, it's not because Nollywood doesn't tell stories. If we weren't telling good stories, there won't be an industry. It's the fact that when you watch it compared to an American film, you can see a car flying.
Yes.
We try to do those stunts, but they just manage not to, because again, there's a gap in the knowledge space and in the financial space. So what they've then done is, the people that watch your content, let's keep it for those people. So a geo-locking is to say all content is only seen in sub-Saharan Africa, right? So you can't watch Nigerian content in America, in the US.
Yeah.
Again, it has its good sides and its bad sides. What it does is that it then forces us within our ecosystem to grow bigger, right? But before now, one of the challenges was that they were paying us not a lot, but a lot of people outside, were consuming the content. Most of the people that are watching my films were in Canada, in America, in the US, in Britain, in Australia. And, it wasn't necessarily counting for us.
Yeah.
Plus or minus. What they are willing to pay us is smaller now.
Yeah.
Right? And what they are willing to buy is fewer now.
Yeah.
What they want to buy is the cream of your content. And the truth is, it's a business, so they must make those decisions, and we hope that we can make the adjustments that make this work for us. I think that the solution long term is for Africa to build global platforms, and then through building those global platforms, if the platform owners are willing to support the producers, because usually, again, see what's happening with cinemas. Well, we make the content and then some people take the chunk. Of course, they need it because they need it to run their businesses. However, I don't think an online platform needs to take as much as a cinema who has physical needs. So it has to be a symbiotic thing where the platform owners are helping the producers, because it's the producers that provide the content for the platforms. Now, and this is a question of greed, but everywhere in the world, when collaborations start to work, progress starts to come. Right. And that's what the distributor has to care about the producer.
Yeah.
The producer has to care about the distributor. And that's what a symbiotically beneficial relationship is. So that we can then push the frontiers beyond Africa and begin to compete with the world.
Sounds right. But this is why I think what they're offering is lower, where they're willing to take it to is lower too. Now, I read a couple of submissions from some international media experts on the reasons why Netflix is restructuring, to use your phrase. And it's the fact that Netflix, they feel betrayed. Netflix feels betrayed. They bought into the dream, which they consider now a pipe dream, of Africa to the world. A lot of filmmakers came with the project that we are coming with something new, something never seen before. We are going to show Africa's legacy and heritage to the world, and it's going to be loved and accepted. And Netflix, in their own heads, made the mistake of buying into that thing based on analysis. And they feel like they've been let down with the output. So the ratio of what is promised and the actual output and the reality of what is brought out was far different. And they didn't make the money they expected to make at the time in which they revealed this. Then I said, oh, this is not really working as we planned to. Now, that is my own submission based on what people have written. Of course, a lot of times, written stuff and reality might be different. But stemming down for what was written, that was what I read from it.
I mean, a lot of people are not going to like what I'm going to say. But think of it like this. Let's take it out of film. If you got a building engineer, build your house, and you got Baba Mukaila, and you gave them the same budget, right? What kind of houses do you think will come?
Quite different.
They will have the same amount of money.
Yes.
And Baba Mukaila has experience, but our, builder has knowledge, based on accumulated information that he has access to. It's like asking a baby to eat yam. Where
that's such a description.
Unfortunately, it's where we are in our growth arc. Yeah. We're growing fast, right? Faster than they did. We're catching up, at the speed of light. And thank God for AI that's, is going to even shorten that curve even more. But I tell people that while it's going to shorten the curve, know that these guys, before you get to the point where you see it, it's are going to advance in strategy and ability for them to even be releasing it. Now that I see what AI is doing, I realize that some of the Mission Impossibles, the Avengers that we watched, a lot of this thing was AI. They didn't just tell us.
Yeah.
Right. Some of the things that they were pulling off, it didn't make sense to, they'll call it pyrotechnics, they'll show you some stuff, but some of this stuff has to go to AI.
Beyond,
And so the point I'm trying to make is this. Yes, if I took a Lamborghini and I gave it to a 16-year-old and I gave a Lamborghini to a 45-year-old man, it would drive it different. So you can't blame our people that were giving money and they did what they knew to do with it. So maybe their capacity had not even gotten to the level where they were able to manage that level of, funding.
That goes very deep. I'll go watch this again to get more insight on what you just said. Okay, so moving forward, you have worked with a lot of actors and actresses, and I know they come with a lot of demands.
Wow.
Some can come and just say, okay, how much are you paying me? Pay me. Or some can come and say, I want you to pay me at the same time, I want to work with you. I mean, of course, it's based on the leverage they have in the industry, how much you need them for that particular film. Now, you've, of course, been in a lot of actor negotiations, a lot of them.
Oh, yes.
And I've been in one or two with you, I think. Which one is the one that made you say, Shofe Kwamini? What was the demands of an actor? The demands of an actor that made you feel like, Shofe Kwamini?
Well, funny enough, I find that it will be the worst one is in the future. Because my last conversation recently, I was having a conversation with somebody with my eyes are currently on, but luckily for you can't tell.
Yeah.
I had a conversation with him and he said that he wanted 15 million.
Oh.
And I'm like, bro, are you the fan? Like, don't, I can just give you 50 million, then give me 45 million back as return on investment. Because again, and I don't blame them for asking. It is, I think, a shortfall between understanding how the system really works, right? And the fact that the system cannot afford to pay you that much. Of course, the idea is to then say, okay, you know what? This is how those negotiations go. You mention 15 million, I tell you, listen, I can't give you 15 million, but there's a chance that you make 15 million if you would reduce your pricing and get a back end, percentage of the equity. Now, the truth about the problem with equity in Nigeria is there are no structures to protect you.
Yes.
There are no structures I've not heard enough, litigation cases that are related to film for us to know that, because there's a lot that is going down that is not. How many people get to end up in court? How many of these cases actually get to
court?
Getting to court is one thing. How many of them actually get, you get a significant
remedy?
You get judgment, and that you can use as references.
Yes.
And so in the end, it's still a cash and carry industry. So most of these actors will tell you forget back end. What are we talking about? About give me what you can give me now. And so those conversations, again, what determines how much you should earn? Right? Abroad, you have unions who tell you can't pay less than this. And this, they find a way to create ratings for different actors versus A-list. When you say A-list, you know what A-list means.
Bills, yes.
It's not A-list of I'm raining today because one of my old films
popped up. Yeah.
That's not how A-list works. And we do more perception than the reality of things. A lot of people are, because everybody's calling me and say, I saw your film, I'm not
I'm hot right now.
No, that's not how it works. It should always be based on a body of work. It should be based on the value you bring.
Yes.
And that value can generate in real terms.
So the reason why you don't see court cases on films, movies, and stuff that are done in the movie industry is the fact that, we lawyers have this, the motto, not even just that, the motto of the NBA is where there is law, there is remedy. Yeah. Do you understand? Meaning that where there is no law for a particular thing, there's no remedy for it. Ubi use ibi remedium. So there's no particular law in Nigeria that really governs movie production, filmmaking, and things like that, unlike other jurisdictions. So how do you want the judge or the court to whip up a remedy for you when there's no how I put it, source to draw from? Do you understand? It now means that they have to use their discretion, and they don't really have discretion on filmmaking or the entertainment business or entertainment law, because we're still groundbreaking in that level. Do you understand? So there is not much to do, which is why people
that's quite a job, because you need to have the
you understand
past,
exactly.
You have to go through all of that process.
The experience, the knowledge, the procedural study of everything. So when that's not present, there's no way you can just come and meet a judge and discuss, this what happened, this what happened with the production, this what happened with this, and the judge be looking at it like, what are you talking about?
There's nothing there's no reference.
There's no reference. So, that's the situation. So, on that way, we have a long way to go. There's a lot of framework that needs to be done.
But doesn't that create opportunity for lawyers then?
It does.
Because I think somebody should be pushing for a bill.
It does.
So what is our entertainment lawyers now?
I've been pushing for a bill. I literally even have a bill I'm working on with that regard. But that one is currently for music. I'm still.
Why is everybody rushing for music now? Because that's where the big money is. It's not fair.
No, it's something that can be actualized.
One musician will sing one song and he's making billions.
It's something
that 80 of us, we gather money.
The song is making billions, not the musician. Let's understand that one.
But even at that, it's the musician that we know that collects the money. All the other people that are behind are shadow.
Okay. I didn't want to say this in this episode, but I will. You're missing a lot of things in this music industry. It's a crazy world. So all the drama, all the money-making gimmicks, all the mumbo-jumbo that you see in this music industry is just the global music industry fighting and scrambling for two particular powers. The first power, now, is crazy and complicated. The first power is the natural power. That one belongs to the music creators and the publishers.
Talent.
By music creator, I mean your singer-songwriter, your music producer, any musical genius or Rumpelstiltskin that spins musical straw into gold. Do you understand? That's the first part of it. Now, the second part is the auxiliary power. That's what you call the related rights. The first one is the copyrights. This second one is called the related rights. And it belongs to the record labels, the broadcast, the promoters, and so. So based on what I've explained, it's in a perfect world, in a perfect natural world, the power of music business should belong to the music creators. However, because for them to wield that power and to show it to the world, they need some resources, capital, finance, fame, connection, networking, and they can only find it outside with these third parties. So in order to access it, they now exchange their rights with the related rights holders in exchange to get all these things. So there's a transfer of power. And in reality, you now see that the power and the authority in music business now resides with the big dogs. So that's why it is crazy and complicated. And so it's not about who creates. So the person who holds the power is not who creates the music. It's who owns.
The best thing is the same experience in film.
Yes, right? I agree with that.
We create it, but then we have to go cap in hand to beg, distributors, to help us put the films out there.
Yes.
And so in the end, we feel like the value or the power is not with us.
It's difficult, actually, because if you put a movie out there, look at it this way. Let me use a parallel explanation. You put music out there and you are good. Someone will find you from YouTube. Who is this guy? Yep. Get me his contacts. Yep. How far are you there? Let me sign you. Let me promote you. Mm-hmm. But if you put out the best movie of all time outside, you may not get that kind of thing because the person is looking at, what is the idea that people are going to watch this? Different
becomes
tangibles.
Even more complex.
Yes, it's so complex. I think that's why that doesn't happen. But
even the fame doesn't even come easy.
No, it doesn't.
Maybe once every 3 months you get somebody who says, "Oh, I know you." Yeah, and I'm like, "Oh, really?" So somebody even gets to know me as a director.
Yes. The foreign media has bought into music big time. They are yet to do that with the film business. I think when the collaboration will have more strength, the structure is going to build up too.
Yes.
Like that.
In fairness, we thought that was going to open up when the platforms, came in. And it was. I think, though, that I guess for them, it doesn't make sense to keep an industry you can't own, as it were.
Yes.
In Hollywood, in other countries, there's structure that allows for proper ownership.
Yes.
Right here, it's still very shifty. Even though I would say that, no growth ever happens until the government gets involved, to be fair. What the industry can do, driving itself on its own individual powers, I think we're maxing what we can do. It's, platforms like, Afrexim Bank, AFB, those kind of people who have real, capital that must invest in these kind of things. Let's get lawyers together to build a proper legal framework for how we operate. And that cannot be done by the individuals.
No,
I'm not going to pay a lawyer and I was going to write a bill. Like, how's that part of filmmaking for me? We need associations or laws that protect even, creators from platform owners, stuff like that.
That give you leverage.
And then help you earn your copyrights and things.
Every filmmaker has that one film or couple of films where they hoped to start giving them more output, not just financially. Position-wise, outlook-wise, things like that. What was the lesson you learned from your own when it happened?
I always say that the film I learned the most from was Ajiwaya. And why? It was because initially I thought that film was a bad film because the reception I got when I put it out in cinemas was really poor. And I ended up owing quite a number of my investors for a number of years. And I took an emotional and mental beating from it, But interestingly, I found out that there was a formula in it that was correct, which was there's certain films that are better for platforms than for cinemas. It's the way you say some films get released on cinemas and they don't do well. But then it moves on to Netflix and it becomes number one and everybody's wondering, but this film was in the cinemas and nobody went to watch it. Certain genres are best watched at home. Certain genres are best watched in the comfort of your home. I say to people that, you can watch an action film and not want to watch it again.
Yeah.
But when you watch certain political dramas, you want to pause it, you want to rewind, you want to hear that statement again, you want to understand the meaning. You want to ruminate on it.
Yes.
Now, that experience, it's not something you can do in the cinemas. Can you pause the film in the cinemas? There's distraction and all those kind of things. So, even in the nature of the stories you tell. I'll give you an example, The Artifact. It's not the kind of thing that would generally, would have a general appeal. In Nigeria, what has proven to have a general appeal is what them Funke Akindele, and the co-and-co's make. That will bring you a 600 million, bring you a 800 million, 100, but highly intellectual films can, tend to then have a smaller niche audience, which then makes it tough to sell, in a popular market. However, those kind of films are what you call legacy films, right? Today, when we talk about Godfather, right? I'm sure nobody talks about how well he did in cinemas. Maybe he did well, maybe he didn't. But today, we're watching the Godfather over and over again. Now, let me mention a good film that was probably made a lot of money, but today nobody's going to watch it again. Let me see. Pink Panther.
Yes.
It would have been good at the time, but it was for a season.
Yes.
Right? So there's seasonal films, there are legacy films. Yes. So the nature of your film will determine, whether 10 years from now, I still referencing that film. So I'll give you an example. I still get people buzzing me, say, wow, a couple of these is so great. But guess what? I get more of those comments from Ajuwaya. Oh. Why? Because I made it for a young audience. Yes. Now that young audience continues to refresh itself. Another set of people will come, grow in, and then you have another person making comments. So I made the film in 2017. Today, if I check the back end of Ajuwaya, somebody would have made a comment.
Made a comment again.
It's my biggest film, interestingly. This film that I thought was the worst film. Biggest film yet. Right? Because, again, understanding the nature of your audience determines exactly how your film.
That's really deep, and I think it goes around all levels of creativity. Once you're a creative person, understanding your audience is so key.
Correct.
It's key with making
even the audience of the genre of the film you're making.
Yes.
Yes,
is really key in this. So this is a very tricky question because I know you would want not to disclose as much as you can, but I'll still ask it. What's that genre that you're looking to explore in creation that you feel like has a good for you're laughing already?
Yeah, because they're just gonna call me a foolish dreamer, right?
Everybody who made something that is monumental was once called that. So it's not knock on anybody.
It's not fun when they're calling you. The
process is.
But to be honest, one of the genres I love, aside from the adventure type, is sci-fi.
You like sci-fi?
I love sci-fi. That's the one I wish I could make. Because the world is not limited to this world.
Yeah.
You can create things that don't even exist. When you create for this world, you have to create with a reference in mind. In truth, when you try to make sci-fi too, that's why you notice that the aliens also have 4 legs.
Yes.
Do you get? Or they look like an ant, or they look like a spider, because you need a reference.
Yes.
However, the unlimitedness of
the abstract
yes, makes sci-fi. So imagine if I could do a war of the planets.
Yeah.
Maybe in 2085, right? Man has moved to the moon, and there's a new tribe of human beings who breathe through their ears.
Yes.
And then they say they are the super beings, and they are fighting the guys from Earth.
Yes.
And there's the war. Even my camera guys are laughing at me.
And you have Cam Venus fighting against Cam Mercury.
Exactly. Like, everybody's, and there's war of the planet.
I see why anybody should laugh at it.
Well,
it's a good idea. You call every good creative a madman. Elon Musk has been called a madman a lot of times.
Yes. The only problem with being crazy is that there are many of them that are hungry. This is the other problem. So when you are busy dreaming, you forget that there's the reality of eating. Right? So it's for me, it can be a creative course. So one of the things that I'm not very proud of is I wish I could have made more of the stories that are in my head. But I find myself trapped in repairing the ones that I made. I'm going back to trying to, release the artifact in cinemas. And of course, my team heaved a sigh of relief until we're done in cinemas. And I told them, I said, we're doing another cut.
Like,
and then we see, I'm like, oh God, bro, like we're going to continue this drama. And I'm like, it's a never ending story. Like, I think something else that I've gotten criticized, from critics is why doesn't your own story end? I said, because in my head, no story ends.
And yes,
the characters are still alive.
Yes.
They're still telling their stories. In my head again, see, this is the problem. There are alternate verses, universes where these stories are continuing.
But it's okay if people relate to it. People keep relating. You explain that Ajiwaya now is always going to be relevant to some set of people,
Correct.
like core members, because it relieves the experiences they've either gone through or they're currently going through, or they're about to go through. Do you understand? So it gives them an idea of what's to come. Correct. Now, I think Samuel L. Jackson was talking to, what's his name? This great actor, Bruce Willis. Yes, he was talking to Bruce Willis. And Bruce Willis said, do you know how to stay financially settled as a movie actor in the industry? When you've reached the top, you've tasted good money. How to make sure it continues coming is that create that never-ending character that never ends. That you can, when there's no money, you can pick it up one day and start shooting again. For Bruce Willis, there's always when you hear Die Hard, you're always going to think of Bruce Willis. He can do Die Hard 1 to Die Hard 20.
20, and
people still watch.
We'll still shoot another one.
Tom Cruise, Mission Impossible 1. Now he said he's not doing anymore.
He
said final.
I cannot come and die.
He kept doing and people kept watching. So he told Samuel L. Jackson that, bro, you have Captain Fury. Keep doing it. That's who you are. So a lot of actors usually just carve that niche for themselves and make sure that I can leverage this thing over and over again. So that if my collaborators say I don't want to do anymore, I'm not more producing with you, that's fine. I will get other producers as long as I am still there and people are still watching. So, I think that one is there. And that could also apply with...
I like it.
With filmmakers too.
I like it.
When you create that niche that you can always go back to every time because it's already synonymized with you.
Okay.
So rounding up, I have a few question that relates to this. How do you define, like I said, this is futuristic, at the same time can apply to the now. How do you define success as a filmmaker or success as somebody who creates ideas and films out of nothing?
You're asking a very, very interesting question. Because actually a place in, sometimes in life you get to places where you're in a flux. You're trying to define yourself or redefine yourself. For me, there's something they used to call the agony of defeat or the joy of victory.
Victory, yes.
For a long time, I thought that the reason why I used to make films was for the joy, of hearing that, yes, it's a good film, and I realized that sometimes in life, the best work or the best works are not celebrated in their time. Michelangelo's paintings were, good man, at the time. Today it's great work. Shakespeare wrote books, a lot of the Bible, the characters in the Bible were, torn apart, ripped apart, considered not good enough at the time. Not for fact, all of them were creators, and the idea is this: I'm beginning to change my understanding of what success is.
Yeah.
My understanding of success is not necessarily many films. My understanding of success is not telling many stories. My understanding of success now is beginning to change towards more impact. What's the value that this film gives to the world? What's the messaging of this film? And I sense very heavily that my films are going to get even more thematic. I was already accused of being a very thematic storyteller, but I think it's going to get even, because again, I'm very big on what's the meaning. So success is now beginning to evolve towards meaning for me. What's the legacy? What does it leave behind? What value does it give now? What does it give in the future? And so, I want to make money. I hope to make a lot of money. But I've also found that with the way even my films have behaved, I make a film, I really don't earn a lot of money until maybe a couple of years after. I realize that the industry I'm sitting in is one that will pay back in the future more than in the now. And so, again, there's certain things you're called to. I see other people who are making money now.
Yes.
And they're making a lot of money now. and I want to make a lot of money now before I go and say something that one angel will go and be executing.
Really?
But I also think that, by my soul's orientation is more, what do you leave as a legacy? What do you leave as the future? What do you want to be known as? What do you want to be remembered as? And that for me is my definition of success.
That's deep. I get it, because it's an industry where names can open doors for you. So yeah, I think it accesses it a lot. Okay, so some trick questions. I'm going to put you on the spot here. Give me your top 3 funniest actors or actresses you've ever had.
Funniest
on a movie
set. I love it. Fowles, the bad guy.
Fowles, yes.
That was hilarious. That was hilarious.
It was
hilarious. It was a beauty to work with. Interestingly, I would mention Akan Nani.
Okay.
I found him, and he'll be he shouldn't be angry. Most of the time, if I ever call him, I would like call him to come play some comedic role, because I think his comedic count is really high. And the third person I mentioned, and I'm taking a bet on him, that guy is going to become the Kevin Hart of our industry. There's a guy called Uvi Godwin. He was in The Artifact. Now, of course, he's still in his early days and still rough in the edges. But I think he's going to refine his craft. You should listen to his comedy. He's on the nose, and he's doing what is becoming contemporary comedy, where you use what you have in your environment to create comedy. And those are my 3 best.
That's very specific.
Yes.
That's very specific, because I think, nobody would know them in that sphere more than you, because I'm sure you've watched these movies, or you've been on just different sets with so many people that you've worked with over. Now, I could ask a lot of questions like, who is the most unserious on set?
Is that a question?
Yes, who is the most unserious on set?
Unserious actor I've worked with?
Yes. Thoroughly skilled, gifted, but very unserious on set.
The definition of unserious, you have to be very careful, because there are some annoyingly unserious people.
No, I mean the ones where when you just sit down, you give them, they give you beauty. But once you take the cameras off, oh God, they are quite the handful.
Interestingly, when you talk about that, if there's anybody that embodies it for me, this will be Godwin. Interestingly, he's, I tell people, I don't have to play him out of character. That's who he is in real life. Like, I'm going on a trip to Ibadan, and we spent 2 hours in the car, and he's talking throughout, and we're laughing throughout.
2 hours.
That's continuous energy.
To maintain that level of for 2 hours.
I honestly think he wakes up funny. And I'm not sure he has a moment where he's not
funny.
At least every time I'm around him, he's creating energy. And you see him trying to be serious. Like, these guys, I'm serious. So he's knocking you all over.
Those are the best people to spend time with, because it's vibes for days for you.
Yeah.
This episode has reflected, you've not just said the fact that you are somebody who thinks about refining ideas. You've shown it. That's why I do see me doing this again between the next 3-4 years again. Because there's a lot of story to tell again after. There'll be a part 2 of this, definitely. And with that, thank you for coming.
Thank you for being
here. I enjoyed this thoroughly.
It was
very
myself.
Intellectual and erudite. And sometimes I don't want to do that. Sometimes it just comes up and it happens, and I enjoy it, because I like a lot of intellectual stuff, talking about it, and I'm really happy I enjoyed myself thoroughly doing this.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
So thank you for watching the E.M.L pod once again. This was the episode with Lotsana. We had a very insightful discussion where we talked about so many stuff you'd be interested in as an entertainer, as a lover of film and music, and also as an intellectual. So please like, share, and subscribe to the E.M.L pod for more episodes and more shows that will come your way. Thank you. Have a lovely evening.